Good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Nirenberg, Mayor of San Antonio, Texas, and Chair of Texas's Big City Mayors. On behalf of our coalition, thank you for being with us today. I'm joined by 9 of my mayoral colleagues to advocate for a once-in-a-generation investment in critical infrastructure that is certain to make our communities more resilient, sustainable, and equitable. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Framework will enable our cities to make necessary upgrades to our local transit networks, our roads, bridges, water systems, clean energy networks, broadband access, pollution abatements, and cybersecurity infrastructure. We are hopeful and encouraged, especially with the recent movement in the Senate, that the negotiations will be swift, allowing Congress to take the necessary action to advance the framework to the president's desk. Municipal governments have the unique responsibility of managing services and operations that affect our daily lives. Commutes, clean drinking water, green spaces, and more recently, pandemic response operations are just a few of the vital services that cities are faced with executing each and every day. And Congress can continue empowering local governments to improve the lives of our residents by taking immediate action on this framework. The mayors joined today represent residents from every corner of Texas, from an array of political ideologies, because investing in our infrastructure is more important than politics and partisanship. And I think most will agree that if a bipartisan group of Texas mayors can champion this piece of legislation, then it should be relatively easy to get the Bipartisan Infrastructure Framework passed in Washington. Thank you all again for being here today. And now I want to turn it over to another of my colleagues, Mayor Sylvester Turner in Houston, Texas.
Thank you, Mayor Nirenberg. Look, I'm pleased to join the big city mayors and everyone participating in today's discussion on the bipartisan infrastructure deal. I want to begin by thanking President Biden and the bipartisan group of United States senators who have worked on what the administration is calling the most significant long-term investment in our infrastructure and competitiveness in nearly a century. This deal promises key investments to put people to work across the country and comes at a time when cities are working to bounce back from the tough challenges as a result of the pandemic. What is critical to the success of this bill is directing these funds directly to cities. This would bring project decisions closer to taxpayers and allow cities to design and implement projects that meet their specific needs. In Houston, we want to directly upgrade the infrastructure in our complete communities, neighborhoods that have been historically under-resourced and overlooked, most often our communities of color. These investments would create more resilience, from good drainage and less flooding to mobility for our users, to access to parks, stores, healthcare, and transit, and ultimately base infrastructure that supports new businesses and services in these underserved areas. The city of Houston occupies an area of about 670 square miles and is the largest city in the United States by total area. That includes a lot of infrastructure to maintain, repair, rehabilitate, or reconstruct. Houston has over 16,000 miles of streets. Recently, we created a systematic plan to identify streets that need to be rehabilitated. We found an initial funding source and timeline for work, but more resources are needed. And so Houston has communities that have been divided by highway infrastructure. In addition, we have over 700 at-grade rail crossings. This investment is important to connect our communities, particularly for people biking, walking, using a wheelchair, or riding a stroller. The bill proposes investment to reduce crashes and fatalities. Houston is committed to Vision Zero. In this current fiscal year, we're investing over $20 million on projects on our high injury network, but the need is much higher. This bill will provide more investment in safety, including the ability to expand our high comfort bicycle network and pedestrian infrastructure. And then lastly, Houston's water and wastewater system is one of the largest and most complex in the nation. The wastewater system alone consists of over 6,000 miles of wastewater pipes, 382 lift stations, and 39 wastewater treatment plants. We are needing additional federal resources to pursue additional innovative and transformative flood mitigation projects that will reduce flooding in areas mostly affected by record high rainfalls. And we are doing it with an emphasis on prioritizing protection for our city's most vulnerable residents and communities who too often bear the worst impacts of extreme rainfall and storms. And like many cities in the United States, our infrastructure is at an age where it can no longer simply be repaired, and we must look at rehabilitation and reconstruction and building for tomorrow's challenges. And now I have the privilege of turning it over to Mayor Dan Pope from the great city of Lubbock.
Thank you, Mayor Turner. It's great to be here today. I am Dan Pope. I've served as Lubbock's mayor since 2016. And if you hang around this group very, very long, you'll hear one of us say something along the lines of potholes are not Democrat or Republican. They're just potholes. And we attack our business like that. It's good to be with a group of mayors who pull together for the great state of Texas. And so when we think about infrastructure investment, we know that infrastructure creates jobs. It promotes economic development, and it allows, in our part of the world, it allows us to get our products to market. The food, the fuel, the fiber that are produced in West Texas that serve the rest of Texas and the world. Broadband investments are also critical in rural Texas. And an infrastructure investment targeting broadband is really key to educating our kids and to closing the gaps that exist. So, in closing, we really encourage Congress to work together, to show leadership, to get this infrastructure, common sense infrastructure legislation passed. Let's get those funds to our cities. Let's make an impact on our country. I'll now turn it over to another great West Texas leader, the mayor of El Paso, Oscar Leeser. Oscar, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Pope. I am Oscar Leeser, the mayor of the great city of El Paso. And El Paso is a vibrant border community. It's home to over 800,000 people locally and over 2.3 million binationally. It's situated along the U.S.-Mexican border, and it's one of only 11 ports of entry along the nation's southern border. El Paso's international bridges rank second in international vehicle and pedestrian crossing and third annual in cargo crossing. Nearly $80 billion in trade moves through the El Paso bridge system in 2019 alone. The sheer volume of people and goods moving through our community on a daily basis makes El Paso, its roads, and its international bridges system a critical element of our nation's international trade, infrastructure, and commerce activity. Even so, our bridges, like many others, land ports of entry across the country, are outdated, resulting in congestion, long wait times, and security concerns. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Framework offers an unprecedented opportunity to invest in the infrastructure that is so important to the health of our country's international trade system. In the long term, it represents an investment critical to the future of our community and our nation. We urge our congressional leaders to act quickly and ensure this plan becomes a reality. Thank you again for the time. And I couldn't, all the words we were able to say today and all the great mayors of the state of Texas, I don't think it's enough to share the importance of this bill. Thank you. And now I pass it on to another great mayor of our great community, Mayor Parker.
Thanks, Oscar. Appreciate it. Good to see everybody. My name is Maddie Parker, and I serve as the mayor of Fort Worth, Texas. I think I'm right up there with a few of our other fellow mayors here that are new to this team of wonderful big city mayors. I wanted to join this press conference today for a variety of reasons. First, I think it's important that you understand we're representative of the leaders in the nation that are absorbing population growth. And we really are representative of world-class cities where Americans want to live, work, raise a family, and play. And the bedrock of our responsibility, of course, is infrastructure. We're holding up our end of the bargain through well thought through bond programs, capital infrastructure planning in our cities But what we haven't had is a supplemental partner on the federal side. And this is what this infrastructure bill really represents. It's an intentional investment into the future of not only Fort Worth, Texas, but all Texas cities that are really why we're here today. I'll remind you that Fort Worth, Texas is the second fastest growing city in the country. We are an incredibly vast area. Dense population is less spread out here per square mile than most American cities. And we understand that if we use these funds productively, the opportunity is really to meet the needs across now an almost 1 million people in Fort Worth. We also understand that we're trying to support leading edge companies doing really, really big things in mobility innovation specifically. In Fort Worth, we have companies like Bell, BNSF, leaders led by Hillwood and others. They're really pushing the needle in mobility infrastructure across America and really across the world. But they need to be met the needs of course, what our federal partners can do here in Fort Worth. Other mayors have alluded to all the many things that this bill provides, and I don't have to go into that. The other things that are distinguishing for North Texas, of course, is DFW Airport and Alliance Airport. Continuing to be leaders in the country. It's hard to believe that DFW Airport is now the 4th largest, busiest airport in the world. And meeting the needs of DFW Airport have continually been something I'm incredibly proud of Sean Donahue and his team. But this infrastructure deal is another opportunity to meet those needs. I also want to point out that all of us are prepared to have the sophisticated partnerships needed to deploy these resources quickly, efficiently, shovel-ready projects, so to speak. In North Texas, we're led by North Central Texas Council of Governments and Michael Morris and the COG, but it's more than that, right? It's Tarrant County, it's City of Fort Worth, City of Arlington, led by Mayor Ross, City of Dallas, led by Mayor Johnson. But each of us could tell that same story, right? We've been preparing for this for decades, ready for the federal government to pass a world-class infrastructure bill so that we can meet the needs of community. And in closing, I think we've talked about broadband. It is absolutely understandable now as we've survived COVID-19 for our students and families, those folks that need access for education, for healthcare, and for jobs. Broadband is at the bedrock of this, and we can't do it alone in our communities. It's too expensive, and technology innovation is changing too rapidly. And so I'm very proud that this bill has a huge component specifically for broadband. I know in Fort Worth, we're excited to supplement the things we're already doing in community Wi-Fi in our school districts, but also to meet the needs of community. In closing, I'll just say this is what Texas is all about, right? You need your big city mayors, regardless of party, to work together in really comprehensive ways. And I think infrastructure is the perfect example of how critical it is. I think at this point, I'm supposed to turn over to my friend in Arlington, Mayor Jim Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Parker. I appreciate you. Let me just first of all say, as one of the newest mayors, big city mayors of Texas, I am so excited, impressed, and honored about the bipartisan work that our mayors do in this state to help move our state forward. And I cannot be happier to represent Arlington along with this incredible group of mayors here. I want to emphasize again, just as all the other mayors have said, that when we can work together and move our state forward, so can Congress work together in moving this infrastructure bill forward. It is so critically important for all of our cities, particularly here in Arlington, when we have over 18 million visitors a year visiting our fine city. I want to pass this along to Mayor Pete Sayez to carry on from here. Thank you so much, but please, let's work together and get this thing.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. And actually, let's go first to Mayor Munns. Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. I'm Plano City Mayor John Munns, and I want to highlight why this bipartisan infrastructure bill is so important. In Collin County, where Plano resides, we are expected to have a population upwards to 3 million by 2050. And in order to accommodate this exponential growth, Plano's made transportation and mobility infrastructure a top priority. Traffic flow is consistently one of the top complaints we receive as a city, and I'm sure it is for all of our big city mayors. People drive through Plano on daily commutes, and it's putting a great strain on our roads, bridges, and signals. To help improve the movement of the people within our city, the city of Plano will use ARPA funds from lost revenue experienced due to COVID-19. Our infrastructure is aging. Our cities like Plano need support from Congress for critical infrastructure investments, not only in Texas, but across the country as well. So we strongly urge Congress to take immediate action on the bipartisan infrastructure framework as soon as possible. So I'll send it over to Mayor Adler in Austin. Mayor Adler.
Thank you, Steve Adler, Mayor of Austin, Texas. Absolute honor again to be with my colleague mayors from around the state of Texas. I can't begin to tell you how much I value the ability of mayors from all across Texas of both major parties to work together to get things done. We've been united as a group with this big city mayor group here for years now. And I think that it has helped make each of our cities and our states stronger. And that bipartisan push on this bipartisan issue is so important and something that is so easy for us to lean into. Here in Austin, Texas, last year, we went to the polls, and a community with 60% voted to create a mass public transit system, had support bipartisan from our Chamber of Commerce to our most left-leaning organizations, a community united to get infrastructure done. We have a community that is united to increase the capacity of the main highway that cuts through our city, that historically was built in a way that divided the east and west side of our town. Now we have an opportunity to be able to expand that road, but also to bury it and cap it so that we can help stitch together our community. This is the promise and potential of this bipartisan opportunity. I'm real excited. I am also hopeful for future and additional action in the future. But for right now, this bill, this time, will help us with those projects and other projects like broadband, which we have seen during the pandemic is really an Achilles heel in our community like so many others. This is a bipartisan effort on a bipartisan project, and it's something that we have to see happen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Steve. All of our mayors here in Texas. Mayor Pete is with one of our congressional delegation actually right at this moment. So if he logs on, he'll be available for questions. But that is our comments. And let me turn it over to Zach in our office to go ahead and facilitate any questions that may have come up from the press. Zach.
Thanks, Mayor. And yeah, if you're a member of the media, thank you for being here. There's a Q&A button on the bottom, or I already see a couple questions that came through via chat. So I'll start with the top one, and then I'll let Mayor Nirenberg sort of manage the flow of who answers what. But some of these questions are general enough that I think a lot of folks could answer.
And Zach, just real quick, because we do have mayors on here that have had to come in and out of meetings as some questions are coming in. If I could go, Joe, Mayor Zimmerman has joined us now. Mayor, if you'd like to make a few comments, and then we'll go back into our Q&A.
Thank you, Ron. No, I think this is critically important. This bipartisan infrastructure bill, as you all know, we've had in Texas, we've had a huge impact. It's critical that we get money into our cities so that we can deploy that into our infrastructure and kind of rebuild back after drainage, after COVID, and after Winter Storm Uri. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, Zach, sorry about that. Back to you.
Oh, no problem. So we'll start with the top. We have a question from Josh Fector of the Express News. Are you as mayors disappointed now with the current size of the infrastructure bill? Initially, it was $2.6 trillion. Now it's $550 billion. How much does that affect your priorities?
Maybe I'll start, and feel free, mayors, jump in. Our perspective here in San Antonio is that the size of our infrastructure need for decades has surpassed by magnitude, orders of magnitude, the amount of resources that have been allocated. So we are thrilled that there's a bipartisan effort now being discussed. that allocates appropriate resources in the time of greatest need. What we want to do is make sure that something is passed. We know this is not the end of the road, end of the discussion with regard to recovery funds, but we want to see something significant passed. And what is being proposed at this point in the current bill and in reconciliation far exceeds the resources that have been allocated in this generation. Mayor Pope, did you want to add to that, or anybody else? Please feel free to jump in.
I think you nailed it, Ron. I think it's a great first step.
You know, I think that it's so important when we talk about international bridges and what it does, not only for the city of El Paso, for the state of Texas, but also for our nation. When you see $80 billion coming through the ports of entry from El Paso, Texas, if you could look at a map where it goes, it'd be like a spider web. It goes all over the nation. So the importance of the investment, not only for El Paso and to keep jobs locally in the United States, it's so important. So I'm very thankful that this bipartisan bill is coming forward, and we look forward to continuing to expand within the infrastructure to continue to support our nation.
Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question. So the second question that I see here is, do you as mayors know how much of the bill's allocation for utility upgrades will or can come to Texas, given that we're not, most of our cities anyway, are not on the national power grid? I know I'm not speaking for El Paso when I say that. Can ERCOT tap into those federal funds? Have y'all been made aware as to whether or not ERCOT can access those funds?
Again, I'll lead off if anybody else wants to jump in. This is obviously a extremely important issue in the city of San Antonio. We suffered, like most of Texas did, during Winter Storm Uri. At this point, the final rules and regulations on ARPA have not even been released. So what we are seeking in our visits with congressional delegation and up on the Hill is to ensure that there's flexibility to take care of our broad infrastructure needs that are very diverse. And that includes recovery and resiliency in light of the winter storm. So we hope, it is our hope that those funds can be used to bolster resilience of our own energy system here in San Antonio, which of course is important to maintain reliability in the entire state grid.
Yeah, Mayor,
that answer has not been reached yet.
I think Mayor Nirenberg hit this head on. The other thing that's important to note for media is it's going to be our responsibility as mayors to explain to our constituents what this infrastructure bill really does, how ARPA funds are actually deployed. We're the ones boots on the ground really dispersing those funds. And so we're anxious more than anyone to understand the rules and regulations in place. I don't know about all the other mayors on the call. I'm sure I can attest. You've got hundreds of staff members that are focused on this to make sure we're meeting the needs, especially to ARPA. And now as infrastructure is a part of this, working with our other coordinated partners. And so we're excited about this infrastructure bill, but we're anxiously waiting to understand the details and how it will really break down. And importantly, how we can spend these funds in Fort Worth or in Lubbock and San Antonio. So.
Okay, we have one more question that I see that's been submitted initially for Mayor Nirenberg, but I do think that the other mayors could chime in as to what it means for their cities as well. Obviously, this bill includes funding for broadband internet. What did we learn during COVID about the current state of high-speed internet access? And that's first to Mayor Nirenberg.
Well, I appreciate that. As is the case in virtually every aspect of this pandemic, it uncovered the inequities and made them as clear as daylight for everyone. And one of those areas that tracks with poverty and food insecurity and everything else is the digital divide. And that's significant here in San Antonio. So our priorities as we recover are going to include, in terms of infrastructure, how we build resilience, how we improve public health outcomes, and then how we can improve connectivity. So the digital divide was only further exacerbated by the pandemic. but it has also given everyone the priority cause to fix it. And that's what we look forward to doing with the help of Congress.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think every Texas boy or girl or a mom or dad has the right to live, to chase the American dream. And today, so much of that is based upon connecting to where information is, where jobs are. And we realize that they're part of our broadband infrastructure that must be addressed, whether it's in San Antonio or in shallow water. And we just have to do it. And if Texas is going to continue to grow, it's one of the wisest investments we can make.
I mean, that, the future of our country, the future of our nation in El Paso is the youth. And broadband is so important to make sure that we can assure the future is there. So I think if we look at some of the important things that we talk about day in and day out, broadband and being able to, we talk about that the pandemic exposed it. We've been exposed to it for a long time. And now it's important to make sure that we provide broadband for all our community and all the areas. And, El Paso, it's been so important for us and it's become one of our #1 priorities. So thank you for that opportunity. And I look forward to connecting El Paso to our youth.
Mayor Ross?
Well, you just took the words right out of my mouth. I think this pandemic has certainly emphasized our inability across the state of Texas, and I'm sure across the country as well, to provide good internet access and broadband to our residents who have inequity issues throughout, and especially in our urban areas. I can't think of a more important issue right now is to have access for these children, for the parents, to help us get words out and for future pandemic issues, and to help educate our kids. Our kids are our biggest priority in every one of our communities. And I can't encourage Congress enough to get this thing passed and help us out.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else? Well, as we close, let me just thank our mayors in all of our cities. For those still listening, this group of mayors has been at times a shoulder to lean on, but all the time a voice of reason and encouragement through some of the most challenging times we've ever faced in the state. It has been a great group that has advocated on behalf of all the residents of Texas, regardless of political ideology. And because of that, this bipartisan group, I believe, serves as a model to the nation in terms of bringing back what we know works and can work, and that is bipartisan collaboration across the aisle to get things done for our local communities. So on behalf of the entire state of Texas, thank you for joining us. Thank you to our mayors, and we look forward to seeing you all soon.